So buckle up because this week is going to be a bumpy ride. We have got Mr. James and Ghost Stories. I might have mentioned him previously, and I thought I'd do an episode on him this time. So I don't know if you can see it, but I did mention that I like ghost stories. This is like some of my ghost story books collections, but not all. So ghost stories, more ghost stories, great horror stories. I think at this time they mean it slightly differently. But yeah, ghost stories, uh, the Haunted Library classics. These are actually not bad from the British Library because these are like sort of a bit like lost ghost stories which were printed in the 30s or something and then never reprinted. So worth a look if you like this kind of stuff. Lost in a Pyramid. Okay, technically not a ghost story, but it's got mummies in, and mummies are sort of something between a ghost and a zombie. So anyway, nice if you like this stuff. The Penguin Book of Ghost Stories. This is one of the first ones I ever read, and I like the stories in here. So here you go. Glimpse of the Unknown. Ooh, with those eyes. But here we are, curious. This is the guy who sort of started it all in the modern age. He is the sort of father of modern ghost stories, and then of course it's evolved into things we read now. There's a much broader category of ghost stories. So first of all, who is Mr. James? Mr. James was born in Kent in the 1st of August 1862. So one, he's a proper Victorian. Two, he's a Leo, man after my own heart. His name is Montague Rhodes James. He died on the 12th of June in 1933, so he had sort of like a lifespan. He lived through the Victorian times, Edwardian times, up until First World War. And he was, now why is it important who the writer was? Because I think you always see a little bit of the writer filter in the stories, and this guy writes what he knows. As I don't know if he was a ghost hunter. I don't think he was. It wasn't like Professor Venkman, but he was a professor. He was in Cambridge, so he is a very respected up to today medievalist scholar, very well known. He was a provost in the King's College in Cambridge. He was also provost in Eton. This means things to our English fans. They know what these are. For their American fans, Cambridge University effectively, and Eton is a private school that is like quite well known in England. So he was Vice Chancellor of the University of Cambridge, so he was quite well respected. And he wrote ghost stories. Now, how did that come about? So it was not like a planned thing. It seems that the British have this tradition and they really like reading ghost stories during Christmas Eve especially. So when he was in the college, he had this like little group of friends, and he would write a ghost story for them and read it aloud, and they'd get like scared and they'd like it. So each year the little group of friends got bigger and bigger, and he would, like, from what they say, wait for him, and he'd rush in at 11 o'clock clutching the pages, ink still wet on the thing, and read them the ghost story, and they'd love it. And in fact, slowly there was a collection, so he did publish a book and then more books because people loved them. So yes, that's how everything started. So something about me, I like ghost stories, as I said, but I don't really like the very violent ones. I don't like very grim ones. Sort of like a bit like ghost stories. Well, you know, it's like with the horror movies, I don't want to get scared too much. We watched The Ring with my sister, the Japanese version, the first one, and when Sadako just like climbed out of that TV, it scared the living bejesus out of us. We were sleeping in the same bed for a week, not to mention that we put a pillowcase over the TV when it wasn't on for another week. So yeah, that's how brave we are. We watch a horror movie, and then I'm going to turn the house into Las Vegas. And I don't mean the gambling kind. It's like all lights on. But anyway, curiously, I do enjoy ghost stories. and he writes really interesting ones. So the main heroes here usually are male, because like you have to remember we're in like when we are, so we're in like the 19th century, and I think he's writing a little bit like him being himself, but not quite. So it's usually a scholar of some description that goes somewhere and finds something, which maybe it was better not to find. It's someone who, some of these heroes are a little bit highly strung, some of them are a little bit repressed. Read what you want, but it's that kind of person. But what I like and really enjoy in this is like, this is the kind of story that when you've got a group of friends around, you had a couple of drinks, and the conversation goes this way and that way, and suddenly someone said like, I think I saw a ghost one time. Someone else said like, I think I saw one too. And what did you see? And they sit down and they tell you this story about this ghost they've seen, and they get really scared, but it's like they've seen it, you get scared, but you got an escape. So this is like someone telling you a ghost story, and this is what happens in the book most of the times, because like not all of them have the happiest ending, some of them but anyway, so let's go in and see a few of them. So just to let you know, this is the 150th anniversary edition. This is they put, I don't know, the best of, and they got re-edited because like what the editor says in, like he thought that these were like more written to be read aloud, so he did a little bit, not much, but a little bit of editing to let the flow be a bit better. So if you have other versions, other editions, but more or less it is the same story, and it's like the scares that count. So onwards. I've ticked what I do when I read things, especially like short story collections. I always put a little tick next to the ones I read, because I don't know about you guys and your memory, but sometimes I sort of come back and forgotten which ones I liked and which ones I didn't. But I'm gonna start with number 13. So this is what happens when you don't check up the TripAdvisor sort of like ratings for where you're staying, or you don't look very well in your B&B. This guy goes to somewhere in Denmark. So he stays in a very well reputable little inn, well, not inn, sort of bed and breakfast, whatever they had at the time, because this is like the beginnings of the 1900s. And they don't like the number 13. Now this is actually a tradition in many countries of the world. Up to now they don't have the number 13, because like travelers are superstitious, they don't like that number. So yes, he stays in number 14, and he wants a big room because he wants to work in the room, and he's paying his dollar so he can have whatever he wants. So he sits there, and one night he thinks, where's my suitcase? I told that guy to put the suitcase in that place, the porter, and it's not there. He gets really annoyed, and he's looking around, he's thinking, this isn't as big a room as it was when I sort of booked it. I wish I had taken number 12 or something. So yeah, he wakes up next morning, and he tells the maid that's come in, don't move my stuff, and she just laughs, and he just looks, and the suitcase is exactly where he left it. Doesn't know why he couldn't see that. Well, I must have been a bit tired. So next evening he sits there, sits outside the window, has a smoke, takes off puts a cigarette at the edge. Yeah, not the greatest idea. I don't think you can even smoke in hotels anymore, but anyway, he puts a cigarette butt there, goes to sleep, wakes up the next day and sees that his room has actually 3 windows, goes out, has a look. He was sure he was smoking at the left-hand window, but he wasn't. He was smoking in the middle window because the cigarette butt is there. So what's going on here? The room seems to be moving. Meanwhile, we get this, like, he's looking at the notes, and there seems to be like some sort of alchemist or someone they really didn't like at the town 100 years ago, and they want him out because he was like meddling with witchcraft and all sorts of stuff. So the other thing is, like, he's got someone living in number 12, and this guy is making a lot of noise, a lot of racket, lights going up and down in the evening. and he complains to the innkeep and saying, what's up? And then one night he walks by and there is a number 13. He sees it, he knocks on the door, tries the door, doesn't open. Guys, do not knock on doors that you don't know. Not a good idea. But anyway, he has this conversation and the innkeep tells him, well, no, sir, we don't have number 13. People don't want to live in it. So what's going on? So that's a very interesting story. Yeah, I'm not gonna tell you how they end because, like, yeah, we don't want a lot of spoilers. We want you to actually go and read these. So another one is Casting the Runes. Now, this has been voted a number of times as one of the scariest stories that was written at the time. And, well, you have to read it to see if you agree. And scary, like, shifts from time to time. But having been in academia, I have to say that it is interesting because this is like a guy who's an editor in an academic journal, and he gets this article from someone who is supposedly a crackpot, and it's not a very good article. He doesn't feel it can be published in the journal, so he sends him a rejection note. Now, this guy, the guy who gets the rejection, apart from not taking it very well, also dabbles in the occult. And it does not go very well for the journal editor. And having submitted like a number of papers to journals, I don't know, I might have a tiny bit of sympathy for the guy whose paper was rejected, or when you get like, revisions again and again and again and again, because we don't have anything else to do in life, do we? Just like write revisions for journal papers, as one does. Anyway, now one of the most well-known is Trakte Middoths. Now, this is an interesting story, and again, it involves libraries, a lost book. It's in a university, so this guy, to make up his income, he's a student and he works in the library, and someone comes and asks for a particular book. So he goes to find it. It's a strange book. At first he goes to find it, he sees a strange figure looming around it, and when he goes near this figure, he faints. And a lot of strange things are happening concerning this book. And also an inheritance hangs on the balance of finding this book. So I'm not going to tell you anything else, but it's quite interesting. Nothing is what it seems. And have a look. And there's Lost Hearts, which I read, and it was like quite interesting because this is like a young boy gets orphaned, and this weird cousin from nowhere, quite rich cousin, comes in and says, yeah guys, I'll take him, I'll be the guardian. And he gets taken to his big mansion house in the middle of nowhere. The housekeeper seems to be a nice woman, takes care of the boy. So the guardian sort of is interested in him a little bit. It's like, oh yeah, how are you? And how old are you? How old are you again? 12? Very interesting. There seems to be like, so this guy again is very interested in the occult and has like some strange things in his library, not very good, but during the conversation, this young man, because he's a boy really, he's like 12, in conversation asks, how is this gentleman really, the housekeeper? And she says, oh, he's a lovely guy, he's like, he takes orphans under his wing. He took this like lovely young girl off the streets, but she was terrible. She went missing a couple of weeks later, so we looked everywhere, we drained the lakes, we couldn't find her, something horrible must have happened, so he was heartbroken. And then we took in this like wandering boy who was playing his hurdy-gurdy, I think it is called. And he must have had a bit of wandering blood in him, because like a couple of weeks later he left. And it was, we were very sad, and he even left his hurdy-gurdy behind. So yeah, what could possibly be going on there? Nothing good. And that is a very interesting one, very nice actually, scary. And now we're coming to one of the most famous ones, Oh Whistle and I'll Come to You, My Lad. So this one, apart from being one of the most well-known stories of M.R. James, does leave an impression. I read it when I was in my teenage years, and apart from actually getting the atmosphere, getting the scares. I remembered it. I remembered it all the way up to when I bought this book again. So it does leave an impression. So what is happening in this one, again, an academic goes on his holiday in some sort of beach town, and before he goes, he says, oh, I'm going there and there, and someone says, oh, you know, they've got a really lovely abbey there, and we might go next year and do some like look into it, because he's an archaeologist, the guy who recommends this, but you know, yeah, the monks there, I don't know, they were saying they were a bit in some strange things, and some of them might have gotten excommunicated, but yeah, it's a very nice place, go have a look. So he goes to this place, books in, yeah, has a nice time. And sometime he gets bored at some point, has a walk, goes to the abbey, has a look around, and suddenly, you know, near the beach, sees something, bends down, picks up a whistle. That's strange, he thinks, has another look at it, and blows. And nothing comes out, and he thinks it's a dog whistle, because there's like no sound, so someone must have lost his dog whistle. It does look a bit old and battered, so he thinks nothing of it, puts it in his pocket, goes back to his hotel, and then strange things start happening. He feels like someone is behind him, someone's looking at him, looks back, no one there, and you know that it builds and it builds and it builds until that final conclusion. So read this one, really good, really memorable. So I think this is, it has a lot of other ones. Just because I like these ones doesn't mean that you might not like other ones. And there's like Canon Albert's scrapbook. There is A Treasure of Abbot Thomas, so it's another well-known story, and it's well worth a read. Let's see, A School Story, Diary of Mr. Pointer, A Haunted Doll's House, View from a Hill. Oh yes, there's another one that's like quite well known. It's The Mezzanotte. Now this is an interesting one, because like again, someone from the university wants to buy some prints to put them in the university museum, and the dealer sends him some prints to look at. One is like ridiculously expensive, and he doesn't understand why it's so expensive, because all it has is like the front of a house, and it's not even a good print. So he leaves it on his desk. A couple of hours later, a friend comes in, says, what do you think about this one? He looks and says, oh, well, you know, it's like a run-of-the-mill thing, but, you know, it's interesting that it has a little figure here on the left. So he looks and says, like, but that figure wasn't there before, or maybe I didn't see it. Oh, well, a couple of hours later, again, someone else comes and says, like, oh, look, there's a figure walking on the grass. And he says, like, but there wasn't a figure walking on the grass. So effectively in this engraving, a very grim story is playing out, and they're being witness to it, and it's quite interesting, and it's a little bit hair-raising really. So read that one, read all of them, they're really good. Keep the lights on, stay home, stay safe, and good night.